It's funny, some of the most profound lessons about life, about human nature, they aren't new at all. They're actually embedded in ancient texts, just waiting for us to rediscover them. And today, we're going to dive into one of them, the 41st chapter of the Quran, Surah Fussilat. We're going to unpack some truly timeless wisdom on conflict, character, and what it means to be truly accountable. So let's get into it.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're in Makkah, around the year 615. The Prophet Muhammad's message is starting to catch on, and well, the powers that be are getting pretty nervous. So they send this prominent leader, a guy named Utbah, to make him an offer that sounds impossible to refuse. We're talking unlimited wealth, absolute power. They even offer to make him king. So what's the catch? Simple. Just stop the message.
Now, what happens next is what's really fascinating. The prophet doesn't come back with a counteroffer. He doesn't try to negotiate. He just listens patiently. And then he starts to recite the opening verses of this divine revelation. And that moment, right there, it sets up the central conflict for this entire chapter. You've got the logic of worldly power clashing head-on with the clarity of spiritual truth. And that brings us to the name of the chapter itself, Fussilat. What does it mean? It literally means explained in detail. The whole idea is that the message is laid out with such profound clarity that it becomes its own proof. It's designed to separate truth from falsehood so cleanly that it just bypasses all the political arguments and all the worldly temptations. But here's the twist, the big paradox. Even when faced with a message that claims to be this crystal clear, most of the people at the time, they turned away. And this is where the text gets super interesting from a psychological standpoint. It doesn't just say, hey, they rejected it. No, it actually dissects the entire mindset behind that rejection. So what was their excuse? The rejectors basically said, look, there are barriers between us. They claimed their hearts were veiled, their ears were deaf, and that there was a screen separating them from the message. But let's be really clear, the text is saying these aren't physical problems. Not at all. These are powerful metaphors for a willful, self-imposed resistance. It was a deliberate choice to just be closed off. So, to counter this human arrogance, the surah does something absolutely brilliant. It presents this stunning contrast. It zooms way out and points to the grandest things in creation, the heavens and the earth. And it says that when God commanded them to exist, what was their response? We come willingly. And that just puts everything into perspective, right? In a universe that is built on willing submission, human rebellion is the one true anomaly.
And this idea of things being perfectly designed, it just keeps building. The next layer of proof isn't about the cosmos, it's about history. The text brings up these case studies of past civilizations, and it shows that the consequences for turning away from guidance, they aren't random. Far from it. They are perfectly, and I mean perfectly, tailored to the specific sins of those people. For example, take the people of Ad. Their big sin was arrogance, an arrogance that came from their incredible physical strength. They'd actually boast, who is mightier than us? So how are they destroyed? By something they couldn't possibly fight, a furious, invisible wind. Then you have the people of Thamud. A crystal clear sign was sent to them, but they chose to be blind to it. Their punishment? A devastating blast that completely overwhelmed the very senses they refused to use for good. See the pattern? Okay, so after these big, sweeping historical warnings, the focus shifts dramatically. It zooms all the way in from the fate of nations to the intensely personal. The text raises the stakes by asking this really critical question about our own accountability. On the day of judgment, when everything is laid bare, who is going to be the single most undeniable witness against you? And the answer is, well, it's pretty shocking. The key witnesses won't be other people. They will be your own faculties, your hearing, your sight, even your skin. They will speak. They will testify to everything you used to do. It's this idea of perfect, inescapable accountability. The very tools you used for your actions become the evidence. There's literally nowhere to hide. So you have to wonder, right? Why would people act like they could get away with anything? The text diagnoses the root cause with surgical precision. It wasn't that they didn't believe in God. It was that they had a totally flawed assumption about him. They actually thought they could hide their actions, that God just didn't know much of what they were up to. They fundamentally underestimated his awareness. But just when you think it's all about these stern warnings about arrogance and rejection and consequences, the chapter makes this beautiful pivot. It moves from analyzing disbelief to presenting what is arguably its highest ethical teaching,
It gives us a blueprint for how to engage with a hostile world. And here it is. The principle is so simple, but it is incredibly powerful. Repel evil with that which is better. In other words, don't meet anger with more anger. Don't meet harm with more harm. Instead, you respond with something better, with patience, with goodness. And the text promises this transformative results. The very person who was your enemy can become like a close, devoted friend.
Now, hold on. Let's be absolutely clear. This is not easy. The text is very realistic about this. It immediately says that this is a special station, a really high level of character, and it's a level that is only reached by people who have immense patience and who possess what's called a mighty good fortune. That implies it's not just about heroic effort on your part. It actually requires a special portion of divine grace to even get there.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. This principle of transforming hostility not with force, but with a higher moral response, it's absolutely timeless. So the real question for all of us to reflect on is this. What conflict, what tension, what hostility in your own world could be completely disarmed if you chose a better response?